episode of the Republic of Middle-Aged Men. As usual, you have your three hosts. You have myself, Tim. You have Lachlan.
Howdy.
And Ruben.
G'day.
Guys, we're back. We're back again. Tonight I am drinking this 20-year-old beverage, brandy. That's the word I was looking for. So I'm going to pour this right now. You'll be able to hear this on the microphone.
Yeah.
Yum. And that's me ready for the night.
For those listening in audio only, that was a special treat right there.
How about you, Lachlan?
I'm actually breaking my typical here and having a beer for a change. So, Kosciuszko Pale Ale, and it's doing me fine.
Nice. I haven't had that. Have you had that before, Ruben?
I've not, no.
What's the...
There's too many beers out there now.
Particularly pale ales. There's about 1,000 of them.
Yeah.
Let's be positive, though. That's a good problem to have.
That's right, yeah.
It's true.
How about you, Ruben? What are you drinking?
I've decided to branch out and try a different spiced rum. I was really enjoying that Captain Morgan, so I picked up this today. I can't get it in front of the camera.
Oh, it's cracking. It's good.
Cracking black spiced rum, yeah. You tried that one a week or two back?
Yeah, I got that one in the cupboard downstairs. It's a good one.
So I thought I'd give it a punt.
Yeah,
I haven't actually tasted it yet.
Spiced rum.
There she blows.
If you're going to do this whole episode talking like a pirate, that's going to be an interesting thing.
I don't know whether it'd get us more or less views.
It was the Kraken, ancient Greek beast of legend, was it, or is that from some other cultures? I think
it is from Greek mythology.
Yeah,
it feels alright.
It feels right. That's an opinion. We'll get into that later.
Correct. Yeah.
Foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty heavy again. I know we say this every week.
It is. It's like we're suddenly surprised that the same thing that happened last week happened this week.
You guys starting to get the impression that we've bitten off more than we can chew?
I think it'd be fine when we finally finish this book and podcast in another year's time. It'll be all good.
Yeah, next week we're going to do the next book's going to be Cat in the Hat or Green Eggs and Ham.
Well, yeah, I mean, tonight's conversation about opinion would probably be applicable to Green Eggs and Ham.
Oh dear.
So we'll see what the outcome of tonight's convo is. Look, at the conclusion of tonight's conversation, however, we will be approximately halfway through the number of books that are contained within this book, which I think is a pretty good achievement. And you know, the amount of time required to get the value out of it's certainly high. And I for one feel that even when I get to the end of it, there'll be lots of value in there that has gone unnoticed. And like a good movie, I think I feel like if we go back to book 1 or book 2, we'll see some things sort of pointing to what is discussed further into the book, and there'll be like little light globes, like, that's right, there's this thing here now that's pointing to this is where it's going to go later. So
yeah, very much so. And I think the way we're doing it, I think I said this the other week, I think we're probably getting a lot more out of it than if we had have individually just sat down and read it cover to cover.
100%. Yeah, I got no doubt that sort of tackling it in this way, you definitely pull more out of it. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I actually saw one of my cousin's kids yesterday, who tried to give the podcast a go, but it was just too big, and which made me laugh. But it made me think maybe we should do at the end of this a punchlines episode where we could have like what's the punchline for book 1, what's the punchline for book 2, where we all sort of just try and get like the key, this happened, then this happened, then this happened, and sort of not summarize the book but summarize the 10 books of just, this is the punchline from book 1, these are the 2 punchlines or 3 punchlines from book 2.
It'd still be like a 5-episode saga.
Yeah.
No, but like have the challenge of we've only got like 5 minutes for each punchline, for each book to get the punchlines out. Like just bang, set the clock, boom, boom, and just bash it out. See how we go.
Yeah, not a bad idea.
I think it'd be good. I think it'd be a good way to conclude it and see if we remember what we read, 2 years earlier when we first started.
We were only middle-aged men back then, and we're all old men now. By the time we finish this book.
Yeah, it'll be like someone will come up to us and go, what's the journey like to becoming an old man, like they do at the start of this book, and it'll just be just don't start that book. Don't start that book, and you'll get some different experiences out of being middle-aged.
I've been around, I've read some books, I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah. Alright, well let's get into it. So we pretty much last week finished off where let's have a look. The life of the protectors was made out to be far better and nobler than that of Olympic victors. So we're going to go straight into the next part of the conversation through book 5 here. So I'll just read this little bit here, and then we'll open it up. So the inquiry, I said, has yet to be made whether such a community be found possible, as among other animals, so also among men, and if possible, in what way possible. You have anticipated the question which I was about to suggest. There is no difficulty, I said, in seeing how war will be carried on by them. How? Why, of course, they will go on expeditions together, and will take with them any of their children who are strong enough, that, after the manner of the artisan's child, they may look on at the work which they will have to do when they are grown up, and besides looking on, they will have to help and be of use in war, and to wait upon their fathers and mothers. Did you never observe in the arts how the potter's boys look on and help long before they touch the wheel? Yes, I have. And shall potters be more careful in educating their children and in giving them the opportunity of seeing and practicing their duties than our guardians will be? The idea is ridiculous. So this is where they begin. They go, well, now that we've established this, we've got to make sure the apprenticeship for war works properly. So what are your thoughts on that, Lachlan? How would you have liked to have gone and seen Greek war at the ripe old age of 8?
Yeah, look, I think to our modern sensibilities, it's probably a pretty hard sort of thing to imagine. I suppose in that day, life and death struggles are much more a part of life, and real life and death struggles. So I think it's probably not that disconcerting for them in some senses. I think they would have been quite understanding, and I think the parallel that he sort of draws there around gaining the experience, like the son of the potter or something like that, and effectively starting out by getting some exposure so that you can understand the craft of war. It makes a lot of sense.
It kind of reminds me of the start of Game of Thrones, where spoiler alert, but where Eddard Stark is on the way to execute a man of the Night's Watch, and he takes his son, who I think at the time is about 8 years old, and his wife's like, I think he's a bit young, and he's just like, winter is coming and he won't be a boy forever. And it's a mad scene, but it kind of feels a bit like that, like just they need to know what they're in for, and they need to know from a young age.
Yeah, look, I think this is an age where kids are taking on more adult duties at a lot younger age than what kids are these days too. So we have to put a different lens on things. You're probably up in like part of the workforce by the time you're about 12 or something at that age. You're going to be in there like they're sort of saying, helping your dad or whatever it is, in um, your family craft or whatever it's going to be anyway. Like from the time you can probably walk. So
Well, yeah, like even my gran, who's still with us, talks about her parents used to own a poultry farm, and but when she was old enough to go to school, she would do things with that, making sure that like this egg rotator tool that would turn the eggs, and all these different responsibilities she had with feeding all the chickens and all that sort of stuff.
yep,
Like it's just you just did it. So yeah,
for sure. So you can see why they'd sort of land on that kind of thing. But I think it makes sense for the time. Um,
it does, and they're not completely heartless about it. They talk about how we need to balance that with a little bit of safety, and
yeah,
ensure that they know how to ride a horse, so they can then have a fast horse. So in the event of the war not going in their favour, they can flee and get out of there.
yeah. I mean, more or less, they're saying that they want them to be sort of like, I suppose, like guided spectators, and they talk about pairing them up with an experienced veteran who's going to lead and teach them. And that makes a lot of sense because they're sitting up on the hill and they're watching the battle come together, and they say, "Oh, you can see how they're circling the troops around this way, and see how they're flanking there." And like from an education and almost like living classroom thing in the art of war, you can understand how it would be, give them an advantage over other, you know, competing neighbors or whatever it's going to be.
I think it'd be pretty disconcerting for the enemy too. Like, provided the enemy could see, it's like you rock up and I don't know, it's olden time days, so they line up opposite each other, and like you rocked up and you've marched for 3 days or whatever, and there's your enemy, and they got their kids up on the hill.
Spectating.
There's an old man with like they've showed up to watch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you'd be thinking, how confident are these guys? They got the women and the children up on the hill. Looks like they're cooking a barbecue.
Yeah. Yeah, they got a goat on the spit, and it's sitting down, got the rug out. It's gonna be a show.
And
They
the old
did right.
veterans, it's like basketball commentators, like listening to Charles Barkley and Shaq on the sidelines, like, all right, these guys are coming in for the dunk.
Yeah, look, it's not a terrible idea, and I think it makes sense in the time.
Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
so.
Yeah.
But they still want to protect the women and children. So I think last week or the week before we had an episode called "Think of the Women and Children." So they're still doing that. Still thinking about how they can keep those guys safe, but also have them learn and have that education. So that's pretty cool. So once they sort of check that little thing off, and they argue successfully that, like any trade, you need to learn from a young age. They move on to the next point of conversation.
Well, they had a couple more rules. I think they sort of dumped on us there too. It's about cowardice, I think, was the next point.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It's saying
Rewards for the brave and punishments for the cowards.
Yeah, so like saying like any cowards like laying down their weapons would result in the guardian being busted back down to the husbandman or merchant's class or something.
Yeah,
And,
I thought they'd be dead, man. I thought that'd be it. Game over for them. But they actually give them a second chance, which is interesting.
I guess they probably figure there's probably more I don't know, shame in still sort of
In
being
living,
there, the former guardian, and now you're in there like, I don't know, hawking something in the markets or something.
Maybe they think there's more value in a merchant than in a corpse.
Yeah, maybe.
Agree. Yeah. But
Yeah.
That almost sounds like an old-timey proverb, that one.
Yeah. Yeah, and then but the thing I thought was pretty funny was they're like he who allows himself to be taken prisoner may as well be made a present of to his enemies. He is their lawful prey, and let them do what they liked with him.
Yeah, they're like, we're not going back for him.
If they surrender, well, that's on them.
Yeah. Sealed your fate.
There's
buddy.
no rescue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. And but then the next one's even more funny. It's receiving the right hand of fellowship, and what is your proposal? But you'll hardly agree to my next proposal. What is your proposal? That he should kiss and be kissed by them.
This is for the hero, is it?
Yeah, for the heroes. It's like most certainly.
That was Glaucon's suggestion, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
it was Glaucon, the deviant. Glaucon's a deviant. I'm telling you.
He is.
It's going to come up. It's going to come up in a minute.
So he goes, most certainly, and I should be disposed to go further and say, let no one whom he has a mind to kiss refuse to be kissed by him while the expedition lasts, so that if there be a lover in the army, whether his love be youth or maiden, he may be more eager to win the prize of valor.
I think this is like the origin of what happens on tour stays on tour, and
I think you're right.
Reason for it.
I think you're right. And so Socrates goes, capital, that the brave man is to have more wives than others has already been determined, and he is to have first choices in such matters more than others, in order that he may have as many children as possible. Agreed. So they're like, yeah, we'll let him have that because he's going to breed more offspring. So it's good.
Right. Yeah, I wasn't quite sure how it was going to fit in with their thing that we were sort of talking about last week, where they were trying to like arrange the festival as kind of like the time when they get their guardians together to breed for their plans and all that sort of thing. And it might throw a bit of a
this blows all that out of the water, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, because then you would know when your kids were born, because it's like, hang on, it was 9 months from that expedition.
I killed those 11 guys with one
and I was the only guy that
right.
got the go. But it's a smart move though, because maybe at the festival you didn't realize that those people were kick-ass warriors, but then they go do this war and they're like beasts, and you're like, dude, all right, breed away, because you might die soon. So
it might drive some of the ones that didn't get the maidens they want back at the festival. Might drive them to fight a little harder.
Yeah.
So if I'm not going to get lucky at the festival, and I'm just going to have to prove myself in battle,
I'm just going to kill for it.
Yeah. That's right. One of the things that I talk about there, which is interesting, is the right hand of fellowship. And sorry, this is like kind of sidebar, but I was curious. I just looked that up, and because that's kind of the forerunner to shaking of hands, and that sort of basically
right hand.
Yeah.
Oh,
and,
wow! It goes back that far.
Yeah, so it's a symbol of trust and kinship, which then sort of become like adopted by the Christians sort of later on, and it's still here today. We still see that as a sign of trust. I'm bearing no arms, and so I'm offering you my right hand of friendship. I'm unarmed. I'm giving you my arm. So yeah, thought that was interesting.
Probably why it's dishonourable to shake hands with the left hand too.
Yeah, you get the knife
behind
your
shield arm. You got the knife behind you.
Yeah. But anyway, sorry, sidebar. But more or less that they're saying at special occasions and all that sort of thing, they're going to honor the guardians according to their measure in battle, either with men, women, hymns, or other distinctions. So, wine will pour and meat will overflow your plate, and all these sort of things.
It makes me think of. Do you guys ever watch Spartacus, the TV show Spartacus?
No.
Parts of it, yeah.
Yeah. There's
was that one that was just like slow mo after slow mo and CG blood everywhere.
They did after season 1, because the main actor got wrecked health wise. They went to a prequel, and they had a character in that called Gannicus, and he was boss. But all he would do when he would win was just get drunk and hook up with chicks. He was just like the rock star. That's exactly the example they're talking about here. It's just this guy that's like, I am the beast. Where's my alcohol? Where's my women? It's very funny.
So
Yeah.
from here, they're sort of talking about what happens to the guardians that die either. Well, they start off talking about in battle
Mm.
and how they're going to commemorate those guardians. So they talk about giving them special distinction, and they'll have the graves of heroes be interned as such. And I came across, I do love these things when we do a reading around a word that I don't understand. So I had to go and research one, which was sepulture, which
Oh,
was
sepulchre. Yeah,
is that how you say it?
sepulchre.
And
Yeah. Well, that's how
yeah,
I
okay.
say it. I called that dude Thrasymachus, and that was wrong.
I just kept saying sepultura in my head when I kept reading it, but
I've
but
only ever heard it pronounced sepulchre, but maybe who knows? Anyway, yeah. So what is it? What is a sepulchre?
no idea. Well, it's just the burial and interment rites. So yeah, but I've not come across that word before, so that's always fun for me. I go and do my research. But
Yeah, I think that
really,
one
that's what
comes
we're
up in the
talking.
new. That term comes up in the New Testament. I think that's the only reason I've heard it.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, so they're just talking about the fact that they're going to reward those who die in battle, but then they also actually point out that the old dogs who survive the battles and have done well, they deserve the same sort of accolades as well in death. So they agree that they're going to reward them both, and have the internship of heroes so that people can pay their respects in the future and all that sort of thing, have their
So
glory.
the equivalent of our state funerals and things like that.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
And
They
yeah,
love raising a statue
medals,
in
that sort of stuff.
ancient Greece, didn't they? Throw a statue up; it'll be fun.
They last forever.
Yeah. They kind of like get a bit of a roll on knocking off a couple of other topics here while they were sort of on the go. So they were talking about slaves and slavery from battle. Do you guys remember this bit?
I
Yeah,
don't actually remember the about slaves.
I do. So they're saying that if they're fighting another, they don't use the word Greek, do they?
Barbarians.
Or the barbarians, but what is it when it's the same
Oh, Hellenic.
Hellenic?
The
Thank you.
Hellenic for the Greek people. Yeah.
Yeah. So they start off with, if you're fighting a Hellenic army, then you're not to take slaves, because it's morally wrong, and they explain why. But if you're fighting the barbarians, then go for it.
Mm. Yeah, I think they were sort of saying that they basically don't want to have any hard feelings with their neighbours. And they get onto that obviously in a little bit further time, but that was a bit of foreshadowing that they don't want to sort of like rub salt in the wounds. I think.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting,
Hmm.
and
It probably pretty counterculture for how they would have been thinking at the time. I would have thought.
well, I think slaves are part of the spoils of war back then. It was just like,
Yep.
if you captured slaves, it's like capturing a chest of gold. It's just something that you
Mm.
brought back, and then you could get profit from it. So,
Yep.
to say that, well, in a Hellenic fight, you don't get that reward, it
Mm.
probably will work with this republic because they're not in it for the financial gain anyway.
Yeah.
So, what do you think, Ruben?
Yeah, I don't know. They seem okay with slavery.
Just casual like that.
Yeah, like whatever. No, like it's sort of a little bit not. I wouldn't even call it similar, but if you read the Old Testament, they had different sort of rules for Jews as they did for non-Jews. You know what I mean? It's almost like a kind of in-group preference. It's like if
Okay.
you're gonna, if you're gonna, you've got to sort of protect your own almost culture or race, whatever.
Hmm.
Yeah. No, you're right. I hadn't thought of that, but that's definitely there too.
Hmm.
And then sort of from that, is that where they then move on to the looting rules?
Burning and
Yeah.
I
Sure
don't
is.
quite know how they came to that conclusion. I don't know whether one of you guys had a better handle on it, but essentially they come to the conclusion that their armies are not going to ravage land or burn houses.
That was a little bit further on. I think. This was just about like where they're sort of saying like on the battlefield and you've slain an enemy and that you're sort of pilfering their pockets to see if they've got any gold on them or
Oh
any of
yeah,
that
right.
kind of
What'd they
stuff.
say about that?
Well, they're just saying that it basically it's a distraction we don't need, and that other armies have lost battles because their soldiers are too busy trying to steal from the guy they just knocked off.
Yeah.
Um, and you need to be focusing. And aside from that, the Guardians shouldn't be touching gold and silver and all that sort of stuff anyway. So we'll just make looting. It sounds like they're happy if they're like looting armor or arms, I suppose.
Oh, because you're
So
going
I
to use
suppose
it
it's
immediately.
useful, right? In the craft of war. They don't go into too much detail, but that's the impression I got, that it's okay if you're just like taking armor or arms, but not to be like raiding their pockets for gold and knickknacks or rings or whatever else they may well have. And so they basically outlaw that, which
Yeah.
it sounds like that's kind of that spoils of war thing that like most soldiers that they look forward to because it's like an extra payday for them. That's the bonus for winning the battle is looting all the stuff off the corpses. So
Well, I've got an idea, but it kind of runs a little contrary to that, so I could see why they wouldn't do it. But I mean, they got the women and the kids up on the hill or whatever. Why don't they let them run down and come in behind and do the looting for them? They got smaller hands; they can get inside the pockets.
Too funny.
Yeah. Where'd you get that
Well,
from,
you know
son?
what?
Oh, I cut off a guy's finger.
I couldn't slide it over the knuckle.
Well, in fairness, they did sort of mention in one of the previous books about how sometimes they'll wind up teaming up with one of their neighbors, and they sort of said the neighbors can take the spoils of war because we're not interested in them, basically.
Oh, yeah, righto.
Yeah, it's true.
So I guess that's one of the things. We're not going to raid the corpses. Feel free to knock yourself out
All
there.
yours.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good
So
point.
they talk about that, and I think they also extend this to sort of say they're going to respect the dead to a degree as well, in that they're going to allow their enemies to like be unhindered and like gather their dead and bury them or do whatever sort of rites that they need to do.
Yeah, it's pretty noble by their
Yeah.
standards back then, isn't it? Yeah.
You'd think so, yeah.
Very much.
Mm.
Yep. This is where we move on to Discord.
That's it.
Yeah.
Discord.
Yeah, I have to be honest.
versus
I sort of forgot that little bit a bit. I got really. We'll get to it later, but the next bit where they start talking about sort of metaphysics, I kind of got a bit hang up on. I spent most of my time in that, so I think I've forgotten most of this army stuff. So what's this stuff about Discord?
I like it. I'm happy to expand on this one a little bit. So basically, if you're fighting the barbarians, it's war. But if you're fighting your neighbor, as in the Hellenistics, whatever they're called, then they don't call it war. They call it discord. Because we don't wage war on our fellow tribes and fellow neighbors. So, and it won't be the same because we're not going to burn things down and pillage and take slaves. It's we have a disagreement, and we're going to sort out that disagreement and reunite and be civilized and reconcile the relationship. And I thought it was good language, and it made me wonder if that language has been used recently in conflicts or not. I couldn't think of an example, but I thought that's a very politician-y way of saying that. I thought it was quite good.
I thought they worded it really well. It's it also makes a lot of sense. I was surprised, I guess, in this time of like lots of independent Greek states. Well, not independent, but you know what I mean. Like they were all there, somewhat independent, I suppose. That there was still this sort of, I suppose, nationalistic sort of sensibility here. That we're still all Greeks here, so we do need to try and make sure we keep the door open to have peace with our neighbours again. So he sort of sets a rule. I think it was like that you could take was a year's worth of their national produce or something like that, And basically, that's all they were going to do. So, like, take their crops or whatever it is, don't leave them without a roof over their heads, and like slaying their children or something like that. That's going to leave I suppose, like a mark on their society for generations. Instead, let the warriors go and have their fight, have the battle, and then leave them with their houses, and they can rebuild, and hopefully we can get back to being friends and getting on with life.
Yeah, well, the idea was that you could slow them down a little bit, but you're not going to create some long-term blood feud where it's like, they killed my father and,
Absolutely.
all that sort of gear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really trying to minimize it.
Yeah, there's some like quote there. I think it was like, "No true lover of his country would bring himself to tear in pieces his own nurse and mother." And I thought that's an interesting way to put it at the time. So yeah, but yeah, if you're a barbarian, razz them to the ground. But look after your neighbours. Makes sense.
Yeah.
And we've got our friend Glaucon bringing back the challenge for Socrates.
Yeah, they sort of wrap up the war stuff, don't they? And then
Yeah. It's interesting that, I think previously I've thought the oldest writing about war is that the Art of War book. But this isn't so much the art of war, it's like the art of training in war, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, it's about the art, I guess you could say, yeah.
It's more like the management of war rather than the art of it, I think.
A middle manager's guide to war.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is. Yeah.
All right, well, let's, Ruben, I'm going to let you introduce the next part because this is your jam. So over to you, buddy.
Oh, yeah, I like this next bit. This is sort of the stuff I was more expecting getting into this book. But yeah, as Lachlan alluded to, Glaucon sort of comes in and tries to get Socrates back on track and get him to commit something again, and says to him, I'll just read it. But it seems to me, Socrates, that if we let you go on like this, you'll forget that you still have to show us that the state we have described is practically possible. So he's like, yeah, all right, but is it even possible? Essentially is what he goes to him. He said, you sort of said that you will. And, yeah, look, Socrates' response is just like typically submissive. Like he just, I don't know whether Socrates is weak or like, I don't know whether the humility is, like whether it's legit or whether he's just having a dig. But so every time he responds, I'm like, come on, Socrates, man up. Just because you don't have shoes or a penny to your name, be a man.
I think there's a
But
bit
anyway,
of humor to it, though, right? Like,
yeah, I think there's
he's
humor in
like,
it.
yeah, I think he's just sort of like acknowledging, like taking the piss out of himself or something. Well,
That's right.
basically, Glaucon said to him, like, get to the point.
Get to the punchline, brother.
This is Socrates' response. This is a very sudden attack, I continued, and you've no mercy on my delays. I've just escaped 2 waves, but the third, which you're trying to bring down on me now? And I'm just like, come on. Yeah, so he's basically said to him, yeah, but okay, this is all good and well. We're making some headway, but is any of this practically possible?
Yeah.
The version we had this nice little sentence there. It's like the more appeals of this sort which you make, he said, the more determined are we that you shall tell us how such a state is possible. Speak out and at once. Stop stuffing about. Get on with it.
Yeah, it's like we're already up to book 5 here, and we've had one answer in 5 books.
Yeah, mine says get on, don't waste time.
Yeah. So they talk about this for a while, don't they? And it's sort of Socrates is kind of like pointing out. I think like something around the creation of this state is just an idea to demonstrate something hypothetical.
Yeah, and he relates it to a painting or something.
Yeah, well, he's sort of saying like this. Well, this is kind of like we're trying to put up a hypothetical situation of the like best case scenario in which justice would flourish. Um, and I don't know, like he's kind of looking for a bit of an escape here, to be honest.
Oh, big
And
time. Yeah, big time.
yeah,
That's right, because he basically
Yeah.
says you can't really hold me to this being 100% possible
yeah,
in real life, and he compares it
yeah,
to like you wouldn't say to he basically says you wouldn't say to a painter who has the idea of a perfect, beautiful
hmm.
painting, you wouldn't get upset with them because they can't quite realize that ideal.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, and he
It doesn't
basically
make it any
says,
less successful the fact that you can't necessarily physically manifest that to actually look at that perfection doesn't make it any less real as far as the concept goes. And if we can't guarantee its implementation, does that make it any less relevant? Is more or less what he's sort of saying. And then
yeah, that's a
Glaucon
great way to put it.
throws him a bone and concedes and says, "No, you're right. It's a hypothetical, and okay, we'll let that particular issue go to rest." Right?
Yeah, I thought it was well argued to get a pass on that one.
I think
Yeah, I
so.
think so. I think
That
it's
was a bit of
basically
a.
saying that there's an ideal,
Hmm.
and in reality, you're never going to hit that ideal, but it doesn't mean you don't aim for it. Is kind of what he says. So he basically says to Glaucon, "You're going to have to settle. You have to settle for me just to show you in what circumstances it's most likely that this would be a possibility."
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
exactly.
he's kind of lowered the bar a bit for himself there, but I think fairly so.
Yeah, look, I mean, the only way he could possibly prove it was by trying to implement it, really.
Yeah, which would be
And
it's an impossibility, really.
yeah,
I mean, they've
yeah.
got a few drunks there around the fire. It's not gonna it's not gonna be enough to start their own city, you know.
Well, it's gonna, like they said, it's gonna take 3 generations for it to sort of,
For the lies to
the
permeate
law
the
and the lie to
psyche.
be bedded in properly. So that's a long burn to just find the answer. So
I wonder if anyone's
yeah, so
made a game like in Civilization, how you've got all your different starting cultures. I wonder if anyone's simulated this Republic model to see how it would go. Like like start a Civilization or Age of Empires game, have classic Rome versus Egypt versus Babylonians, and then just drop this fictional
Socratic
build, yeah,
Republic.
this Socratic Republic in, and just simulate. What happens after 10 generations? Do they get left behind, or do they end up winning the
well,
game? I think that'd be
I
interesting.
think Tim. The answer is going to be is that they can only generate a computer simulation based on opinion and not fact. So
Whoa,
Aye, aye. We'll get to that. We'll get
nice,
to
nice.
that.
All right, back to you, Ruben.
Yeah. So and so then he immediately gets sheepish again because then like the natural question is then, all right, well, in what circumstances could this be remotely possible? Then Glaucon's kind of like, well, all right, fine, talk to me, and then yeah, and then this is where Socrates does his classic sort of, I don't really want to say, I know what I think, but I don't want to say. Anyway, so it turns out, in his opinion, for this to work in reality, the leaders have to be philosophers.
hmm.
Um, and Socrates basically said, I don't know whether you guys got this bit highlighted. I didn't. This should be a pretty good quote in here, but um, he basically says why he doesn't want to say it.
Yeah, I got that bit too.
Oh yeah, you got it. Yeah, you go. Because I actually like the wording a lot better in you guys' version than mine.
It's just a short bit. Now then, I said, I go to meet that which I liken to the greatest of the waves. Yet shall the word be spoken, even though the wave break and drown me in laughter and dishonor. And do you mark my words?
Laughter and
Proceed.
dishonor.
That's it.
Yeah,
Well, I
the
mean,
laughter and dishonor, and then
and he's bang on though, because I mean, pretty much as soon as he puts that thing out of his mouth about it, the fact that philosophers should be the ruling class basically. Glaucon, you can see, is like super nervous. It's like, look, are you sure you
You
want to
can't be
say that,
surprised.
Socrates? Have you looked around this room?
Yeah, that's right.
Uh,
And he goes, you can't be surprised if a large number of decent people take their coats off, pick up the nearest weapon, and come after you with their shirt sleeves
yep.
tied up and do something terrible to you.
Yep.
So I'm actually not entirely sure why why such a reaction though. One explanation would be Socrates has basically said, "I'm the only philosopher here. The only way this works is if I'm the king." that's one way to explain the reaction. Otherwise, I'm not entirely sure what
I took it the
their
other way around, that he's basically saying that none of you other bastards are fit to lead it because you're not really philosophers. So
yeah
really, if you've got a seat of power and you're not a philosopher, then you're a fraud.
you got
So
no
that's how
right
I
to be
took
there.
it. He's
That's
basically
right.
calling
Yeah.
them all out and saying, you know, you guys, if you're participating in that level, you're not really up to scratch. So
Yeah, I
we just
think
need
you're
to
right because
dispose you.
some of the people around this fire I think are in positions of power, and they go on to be in
Yeah,
positions of power. So,
yeah.
okay, yeah, that makes more sense of it actually.
I think he was just insulting basically everyone in the room. Was sort of how I took it, but
But he also expects them to laugh at it. Is it a bit like, Sheldon saying, "I should be in charge"? Like, is it like the dork in the room that everyone sort of
Yeah, maybe
tolerates but thinks is a bit of a
it's
dork?
like just because you're really really smart. That probably is part of what it is. It's like just because you're really really smart and you know lots of stuff and you're really good at thinking doesn't make you a good leader. Maybe that's sort
yeah.
of the immediate reaction.
Yeah.
Well, look, I don't think he would put himself up there just from how Socrates has been sort of speaking the whole way through this book. And he always
Yeah,
sort of maintains that, he's someone there who kind of like pulls ideas out of other people in a way and just kind of assembles them. So I don't think he'd actually would see himself as a leader. I think he's just somebody who likes to ask questions and sort of pulls things together, if you know what I mean.
yeah, that's actually
Um,
what they call that the Socratic method.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like apparently a thing.
There you go. But yeah, so like I think that's just what's. I don't think he'd see himself sort of going, well, it should be me. And look, in fairness, I think as he goes on to explain it, I think he sort of makes that a
Makes a
little
bit
bit
more
clearer.
sense of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
So
mean, it does. He immediately goes into a bit of a suck up mode, and he says, "You're such a powerful ally that I must make an attempt."
Yeah.
kowtowing. That's it. So more or less, like whilst he's sort of saying that like philosophers should, rule the state, and replace the current leadership that's in there, he does backpedal and sort of says, no, actually, look, what you need is balance. So they should have, um, the power and spirit of philosophy, but they should also have political greatness and wisdom as well. And that's a bit of a bit cheeky because he's thrown wisdom in there, which is what they talk about as basically being like sort of the food of philosophy anyway. So he's kind of like throwing a double philosophy in there. But
Yeah.
anyway, I'm sure there's lots of
Yeah,
people in that room who'd consider themselves wise. So
yeah. Glaucon's natural response is, well, if you're saying these philosophers should be king, you better define for us what a philosopher is. So that
yeah.
essentially goes into the discussion where Socrates talks about what philosopher is, and that's where it gets really abstract. Um,
Yeah, I was reading this just before having a nap, and my brain was finding this part very difficult. I was like, I'm reading words and I'm hearing white noise. It's not computing. I need to sleep.
yeah. So we were sort of talking about this before the podcast, and I think the best way to do it is to start at the end. Um,
Well, yeah, we're
so
not watching a murder
essentially,
mystery. It's all right. We can do that.
so essentially, he comes to the conclusion. His conclusion is that a philosopher is somebody who looks for and loves truth and learning. And essentially what's in between is a discussion of what knowledge is versus what opinion is. That's probably the simplest way I can think of to put it. So he starts out by talking about what it means to have an affection for something or a love for something. And he says, and there's actually a little really funny dig in here at Glaucon. But he starts out by saying, well, Glaucon, wouldn't you agree that somebody who loves something loves it in its whole, loves the whole of it, not just a part of it? And Glaucon's like, what are you talking about, Socrates? Come on, man. And this is what this is pretty good, this bit, because Socrates then goes, well, you love your young men. Look, I'm not going to go into too much detail whether he's talking about boys or young men. Let's just say young men for the sake of for the sake of argument. And he goes, you and every time you see a young man with a different feature, you always say that you love that particular feature. Like, you just love all of them. So he goes, you praise a snub nose, calling it charming, a Roman nose you call commanding, and one between the two, beautiful proportion. So essentially, what he's saying is, you love that thing. You love men.
You love young men.
Yeah, basically, because you love young men, and you'll make any excuse for describing their beauty. And it kind of goes, because I don't remember whether you guys remember, there was that bit way back when, where Glaucon objects, and he goes, "Oh, but someone can still be beautiful even if they're not externally perfect."
Yeah.
And Socrates basically goes, "Yeah, there was that kid that was a little bit deformed, but you still loved him." So look, it's all a little bit gross, which is why I refer to them as young men. But at any rate, he's trying to make a point that if you love something, you love it in its totality. You don't love a part of it. And if you really love something, you'll kind of try to understand it.
Can I just quickly say before you move on, Rude? Because there's just one thing from our version of the text which I just had to crack up at, because he
go for it.
Socrates gives him the title of being a man of pleasure, and I just cracked up at him sort of having that crack at Glaucon, saying chasing down all the young man in the flower of youth,
Yeah, he's like, you're a pimp.
Yeah. And there's nothing which you will not say in order to not lose a single flower.
He's a deviant. That's what he's saying.
He is. Anyway, but
it all makes sense why Glaucon's. It all makes sense now why Glaucon's like, and the person who fights the best, they get whatever they want, right? So I can assume maybe Glaucon is really good with a sword. Phrasing.
Yeah.
Loves the sword.
Sorry, mate, Lockie, you're about to say something. He draws a parallel.
I mean, look, that in typical Socratic form, he draws a couple of parallels to sort of flesh that out a little bit more as far as an example goes. So he talked about the same sort of thing for a lover of wine, and saying, do they only love a specific wine, or do they love wine in all of its sort of varieties and all that sort of thing? And are they going to find any excuse to drink it? He's saying, yes, you're right. They'll love them all. And he talks about ambitious men, and if they can't command an army, are they happy still to command? And maybe it's just the command the rank and file or something. And he says, no, you're right. That's true. The ambitious man. And if you desire any kind of like particular goods, you do desire the whole or the part. And again, they sort of land on the whole. So we keep going through these examples about the whole, and it's trying to find the whole there. So then he draws the next one, which is the final sort of draw, which is about the philosopher. And is a philosopher a lover of wisdom? And is it just is it of all wisdom, or is it just part of it? And they sort of say no, it's absolutely the whole, and that's what they sort of start talking about the philosopher being. So the typical long game with Socrates.
Yeah, that's right. gets you to agree to all these different propositions, and then when you get to the one that he's really aiming at, he's like, well, now you have to agree with
Yeah, because
this.
you've
You
just
agree
said
with
yes
all
to
these
all
other
the other
steps.
ones. Yeah. So they did a couple other funny ones here. They're talking about, if it's if you're a lover of wisdom, and if it's somebody with an interest and hunger for learning of any sort, and if you've got some kind of curiosity, then does that make you a philosopher? And they sort of say, well, no, because then everybody would be sort of a philosopher. And they sort of narrow it down to being that philosophers are only if they are lovers of the vision of truth. This is where it got a bit weird for me.
Yeah, yeah,
Start talking about awake or in dreams, and
yeah. It's pretty much on the cusp of that bit. He says, then what about the man who recognized the existence of beautiful things, but does not believe in beauty itself, and is incapable of following anyone who wants to lead him to the knowledge of it? If he is he awake or merely dreaming? Look, isn't dreaming simply the confusion between a resemblance and the reality which it resembles, whether the dreamer be asleep or awake? That's the bit you're talking about.
mm,
So he's saying that you've got people. I suspect. I know we've sort of talked earlier about Socrates, and there were sophists in his
mm,
time, which are just about influence and persuasion, and he wasn't a real big fan of it. I feel like there's another group of people here. I don't know if it's the same group as the sophists, who have a certain approach to things that he has a very negative sort of idea of. And this is what he's describing here: is there are people who will look at individual things and say they're beautiful, but don't believe that beauty is something in itself. I
yep.
know that's a little bit abstract, but that's what he's saying. Um, and and he says, and he is incapable of following anyone who wants to lead him to the knowledge of it. So he's kind of saying, um, they just won't listen to this idea, which is obviously Socrates' position, that there is something about beauty or justice in itself, and real knowledge pertains to the knowledge of that thing. Now, I thought of an analogy. This is a bit ham-fisted, but it's the best one I could come up with. Um, it's kind of like how you can look at a horse and you can say that is a beautiful horse, and then you could look at a woman and you could say that is a beautiful woman, but you wouldn't say that a woman is beautiful in the same way that a horse is, yet they're both beautiful. So what Socrates is saying is the philosopher is the person who looks at those two things and says there's a larger principle, a guiding principle, or something beyond those two particulars or individuals, and that's called beauty. And the philosopher is the person that loves beauty, not the individual things. And then he kind of has this sort of negative connotation on the person that is only interested in the particulars. That's where he starts to talk about them as if they're dreaming. He's basically saying they're not really awake. They don't really see the truth. They just
Mm.
see individual things. So that's a lot. But what are you guys' thoughts on that?
I'm following you there now.
Yeah.
That makes a bit more sense to me. And yeah, look, I can see that it's almost like sort of trying to sort of under work out what the bottom line is, what makes all things beautiful, rather than just focusing on why is that woman beautiful, or that woman is, or just recognizing that a woman is beautiful without understanding what beauty is in its entirety, because beauty is the commonality of the whole, rather than being the focus on the woman or the horse or whatever it was, right?
Yeah. And that's basically what that's what he's been talking about the whole first 5 books. You know what I mean?
Mm, mm,
You can't just say a man stealing from another man is injustice. That's a particular
Yeah.
yeah.
instance. But he's saying, no, we need to know what justice is in itself, and is it
Mm,
valuable in itself? And that's what this whole discussion has been about. But
yeah.
to accept that, he's essentially saying you've got to accept that that's actually a possibility, that you can know what justice is or beauty
Yeah.
is, and that needs to be what a philosopher looks for.
Mm.
Do you think the dream analogy can also be explained by like a photograph or a picture? Like
I don't
where
know.
you,
Have a punt.
Well, like a photograph of something beautiful may look beautiful, but it doesn't capture everything that is beautiful. Do you think that's what he's saying by the dream? Like, it's too narrow, it's too specific, and so like for example, using the horse and woman analogy, what makes a horse beautiful doesn't necessarily make a woman beautiful. In fact, I've heard the term before of that person's a bit horse-faced. Like,
That's why I chose that analogy. I thought it could
yeah,
be amusing. I was waiting
but
for you to draw that out.
well, there you go. Well played. But so to try and ask the question, because like often you'll hear people say, outward beauty doesn't matter. It's what's inside that counts. Well, that sounds philosophical, but it's not, because what's inside a horse that counts. That makes it beautiful.
Yeah.
These would be the questions I think a philosopher would ask. Would be like, well, but that's not beauty either, because it's not beauty in its entirety. It might have parts of beauty within its description, but it's not actually what beauty is. Do you think that's what the dream analogy is trying to indicate? It's just that it's like I'm trying to think of another way to describe it. It's like cordial. It contains the syrup, but it's not all the syrup. It's like 10% cordial syrup, 90% water. So that's not cordial syrup. It's just cordial.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, look, another example that I've heard is something like dogness. You can have 100 different types of dogs, but they all share something that makes them a dog. And what is it that makes them a dog? And Socrates might call that dogness. That would be like a more simple kind of version of it.
Yeah, okay.
They share the attribute of dogness, yet each of them are individually a dog. It's pretty abstract. It is. It's abstract thinking. That's what it is. That's essentially what he's saying.
But it's a difficult question, and I think most people can't be bothered trying to figure out those answers, which is what I think he's probably trying to get to.
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you said to me, and this is probably a whole nother book somewhere by some philosopher, what is beauty? Well, that's after just reading this little bit and having that sort of little,
just peeking,
that little seed of doubt put in there. Like, you would think, oh, beauty is something that's pleasing to the eye, or beauty is something that's that makes me feel a feeling, and
is that not basically how the book started out with justice?
Yeah. So it's interesting that they've just dropped this conversation at book 5. I almost feel like he should have led with this.
Big time.
Yeah, I almost feel like he should have gone, well, if we're going to discuss, let's do something we all think we know better than justice, which is what's attractive or what's beautiful,
I feel like it would have taken 5 books to get there too.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, and look, I think he has introduced some of this in some of the earlier books as well. And, he just likes to build on sort of concepts over time, I think, as well. So maybe he's just kind of like working the crowd up to this point that they'd, could follow along at this point in time and just go, yeah, okay, that sort of follows from that other discussion we had about beauty. So I can kind of see the relevance.
Right. I reckon that's his method. He's just like, and you can see it where he's like, I knew this was going to be a big wave. I didn't want to come out and say it. But you knew that's where he wanted to go. So I think you're right. It's like planting little seeds along the way and waiting for them to grow.
Yeah. And you know what? I think, we were talking about this earlier. I think if we were to reread this book at the end, you'll be able to like circle those like little seeds he's sowing early on and go, oh, I know what he's doing right there.
100%. But I think actually realizing right now, there is no other way. Like for us asking that question now, what is beauty? Like, how would we get to a good answer without doing something similar of, well, you need to pull it away from the specific example. You can't just say, it's easy to answer the question, what makes a woman beautiful, than it is what is beauty. And
Right.
Yeah, because
you
if
know
you
what I'm
can't
going
apply
with?
nailed
that
it.
Yeah.
same, set of criteria that you came up with for the woman to the other thing that's beautiful, then it doesn't hold for beauty, does it? It only holds
Yeah,
for beautiful women.
I think
Yeah.
you guys have nailed it, because what he goes on to say, and I'm a little bit less confident about this, a little bit more sketchy on it, but this is where he starts to talk about opinion. And he goes, those that just look at the particular or the individual and says, "Oh, that's beautiful," or that thing is beautiful. He's saying that is opinion,
Yeah,
because it doesn't take into account the whole, which is where he started out. Remember how he's going, somebody who loves something loves it in its entirety.
yeah,
So he's essentially saying that the person that just is looking at the particular and going, "Oh yeah, I love that," or "I love that," or "I love that," that's basically just an expression of an opinion in the way that we would think of it today. It's not factual. It's not truth. It's
yes,
just they find that particular thing beautiful, which
yeah,
is
because
what you would see if the three of us had a discussion. We all looked at a horse. We might
Good
find
save.
we might find a different horse beautiful, and
yeah,
they might all be beautiful, but that would be
sure.
subjective. That would be an opinion.
Yeah, and I
And
think what
yeah,
he's saying is you can't have truth if you aren't looking at the whole, because you're only ever looking at
that's
part
right.
of something. So you can't understand the whole thing. You can't have all of that knowledge. So you can't be a philosopher in some senses if you aren't looking at the whole, because you're somewhere between knowledgeable and ignorant. So you're just using opinion, which sits in the
So,
middle.
so next question then is the work that we've looked at so far even relevant? Because we're still restricting justice to be about people. Is at some stage in this book are they going to go, well, at the individual and the collective level, we still haven't captured the whole of what justice is because it's restricted by man? Or do they just accept that the interaction of man has to be part of the equation for justice to exist?
I I think they're talking very specifically that this is a problem for humanity and it's a problem for man. I know he does bring lots of other parallels about animals
Animals.
and the natural order of things,
Yeah,
but I think the way of like cheating out of your neighbor and lying and that's something that they'd called out earlier as being sort of unique to humans and something that
true.
we need to understand. So I think he's going to bring it back in there, but you might well be right that this could be like the deep dark black hole that we get sucked into for the next book. Um,
Yeah,
so,
maybe.
Wow. It's like the tree falling in a woods question.
yeah, I mean, I'd, I'd be super interested to see how they can pull this apart because yeah, it's really hard to think about something so in such an abstract way without bringing in specific examples. And how do you look at the whole? It's really difficult.
Yeah,
Mm. And he even goes on beyond that and sort of layers on top of it this idea that when you're looking at things like beauty and justice, those things have to be eternal and unchangeable, like eternal, unchanging things. And it's just like, all right, now it's just getting really like out there.
Mm.
I'm not saying he's wrong or he's right. I'm just saying like he really starts to make some solid claims. Like
It's like he's saying it's like a law of nature, and it's just that we haven't discovered the key to understand that formula that already exists, and we just need to understand this formula to get this broader sort of sense of something.
yeah, it,
yeah,
it it really is though. Like it's a really fundamentally important way that he sees the world, because he's saying,
Mm.
I think you touched on something really, really interesting there, because it's like, yeah, beauty or justice is something that exists, and it's something that we discover, as opposed to what he's talking about with the people who are obsessed with particulars, who would
Mm.
say it's something that's created or manufactured, and that throws us right back to the start of the book, where he's like, where you had the opposing opinion was, well, justice is the opinion or
The will
opinion
of
of
the
the
stronger.
powerful. The will of the powerful, you know what I mean? He's like, that puts justice in this category of something that's created. And Socrates' whole thing is basically, no. These are things that we discover. There are things that exist. There are things that don't change, and we discover them, and we have to work to discover them. And I think what he's saying is the leader, the person that leads a country, has to be somebody who thinks that way, and not somebody who thinks, I can create that. It's not something that's discovered. It's something that's manufactured. And I think when you think about that in a really practical sense, I know personally, my opinion is he's right. You don't want somebody who's in power who thinks that they can redefine that thing or create that thing or manufacture that thing.
No, I think
Having
that's
said,
a good point.
yeah, having said that, you could have somebody who believes that they're discovering what justice is and they're wrong, and that could be equally damaging. But yeah, look, as far as I go, I'm on board. I think he's onto something really important.
Yeah, look, I like the concept, but we haven't had a wink of how we're going to explain it yet. So
Is it practical? Is what you're saying?
Well, I think the thing
Settle
is, I
down,
think he's got.
Glaucon.
Lock on.
What I think it is that he's found the right question to ask. Maybe I'm not sure if he's got the answer yet. That's all.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I agree with that.
Yes. Let's move along.
I think that's pretty close to.
That's pretty much where he ends.
Yeah,
that's the end of the book.
It ends a bit abruptly. This one, doesn't it?
It does. Do one of you guys want to read the last little bit of your books? I'm interested to hear
Where from
the
me?
flowery language.
I've got it handy. Do you want me to go, Tim?
Yeah, go for it.
But those who see the absolute and eternal and immutable may be said to know, and not to have opinion only. Neither can that be denied. The one love and embrace the subjects of knowledge, the other those of opinion. The latter are the same, and I dare say you will remember who listened to sweet sounds and gazed upon fair colours, but would not tolerate the existence of absolute beauty. Yes, I remember. Shall we then be guilty of any impropriety by calling them lovers of opinion rather than lovers of wisdom? And will they be very angry with us for describing them thus? I shall tell them not to be angry. No man should be angry at what is true. But those who love the truth in each thing are to be called lovers of wisdom and not lovers of opinion. Assuredly. That's basically what I had there.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so it's basically saying that those of opinion will be angry.
Yeah, but shut up.
That's the implication.
You don't know the truth.
And
Yeah.
Well, I think that's why he has a dig at them earlier on and calls them dreamers. And there's something in that too, because if your position is essentially that these things are not concrete and I can create them, I think you are a dreamer. You're creating something with your mind.
Yeah, it's not wrong.
Well,
anyway, that's what Socrates thinks, and I agree with him on this one strongly. If you can't tell.
Yeah. Look, I do too, as it stands. I'm just curious to sort of see what comes.
See where it plays out.
Yeah, because it's like he's set the foundation, but I want to see him start to throw up the walls. So
Book 5, and he sets the foundation.
Yeah, that's it. We've seen him knock him down before.
Yeah.
So we will move on for next episode, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And see if they answer the question. All right. Well, let's quickly mosey on down to the pub Philosophers. I don't know if you guys noticed last week because I have to put it in post-production. But we have a jingle.
What? I missed it.
You did.
You didn't run it past the boys. You just put it out there.
Yeah, he did. He did.
I think I gave it to you guys in Messenger.
You did. You did.
Oh, I must have missed it.
Well, Lachlan definitely gave me the thumbs up with it.
Yeah.
What did you say it sounded
2 out of
like?
3 is enough.
I can't remember. I think it was like that's right. It's like I could see myself in the Agora or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, with this music playing. Yeah.
So we won't spend too much time in the pub.
I was going to say, I must have missed that. I was too busy sending you links to like 80s action films like Battle Truck.
Oh, I meant to click on
probably.
that. I haven't clicked on it. Yeah.
All right.
We'll have
Anyway,
to do a
mate,
movie
you were saying?
review for that. So the Pub Philosophers for this week, just a quick one. We got an Uber Eats last week, and the Uber Eats driver offered us a copy of the Quran, which I'm holding up on camera, with some brochures. And I thought, that's really cool, because I've been meaning to get a copy to read it for a couple of years, and but he's super nice about it. Didn't force it, didn't like sneak it in the bag or anything like that, but just sort of went, "Oh, would you like this?" And my wife was like, "Yeah, sure," because I'm like, "Yeah, we would like that." So I gave the dude a good tip for handing out a free book. So interested to have a read of that soon. I've always intended to read it and get my head around it, but I just thought that was.
Is that what we're doing
random.
after Plato's Republic? Because if that's what we're doing after Plato's Republic, I don't know whether I can hack it. I'm not against the Quran, but we've got to do something a little bit lighter than this.
Yeah, I think you had some suggestions prior to us recording. What were those?
Green eggs and ham, or maybe cat in a hat.
Yeah. You know how Jordan Peterson does the psychological significance of biblical stories? I wonder if you could do the philosophical significance of Dr. Seuss stories.
Yes.
Surely that's
I'm
a
sure
thing.
you could.
Yes.
I reckon.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought that was really cool. I thought it was, he's obviously trying to get the word out, and I thought it was a good use of his opportunity. I'm not sure what Uber Eats policy is on distributing religious texts whilst making deliveries, but I appreciated it. It saved me having to buy a copy, so I think it's pretty cool.
I wonder how many people would be upset by that.
I'm sure some would
I
be.
suppose you couldn't really get upset though, because it's like he's offering it. He's not like you said, he didn't sneak it in the bag, which would be hilarious. But
yeah,
if he and look, like you said, if he's being pretty cool about it, just saying, hey, don't have to have it, but just if you're interested, I've got one. Do you want it? That's all right.
Nice.
I thought it was cool. But Lachlan, I saw you were at a.
Walk around with that. That's it.
Yeah, I saw Lachlan. You were at a car show doing some photos.
Yeah, man, super cool.
Is that coffee with cars, or is that the?
That was a sort of like a post-COVID reopening of our local sort of car cafe.
Nice.
Benzin, which is up at Dural, and it was that they had a JDM sort of car meet on Friday night, and it was awesome.
What does JDM mean for those who aren't car people listening?
Yeah, sorry, like Japanese domestic market. So
there you go.
Basically around cars that are made in Japan. So it was really cool. I think just people were just in a really good mood to be out of lockdown and being able to go and do stuff. That's the first sort of car meet I've been to since lockdown. So I got the camera out and took my son along, and we had a ball.
Nice.
Took some photos. They had Japanese food there, and good vibe, good people. And
you took some photos. Do you mean 73?
Probably more. I might have narrowed it down to
Facebook says 73.
Yeah, maybe.
Nice.
But that's good. I hadn't been out there taking photos for a while, but it's something I really enjoy doing. So it was good to get out and do that sort of thing.
Nice.
It's nice.
And Ruben, all three of us know him. Our mate Mick has pulled through surgery and is home now. And I saw you guys were playing a game. What game were you playing? Was it Left 4 Dead or something? What was it?
Back 4 Blood, which is I think it's supposed to be like a sequel to Left 4 Dead.
Back 4 Blood. How is it? Any good?
Oh, I don't know. We didn't get past the first level. So I don't know. It's probably because Mick pumped it up to the hardest difficulty setting because he thought that was hilarious. But it's probably hard to gauge off the back of that. But we had a bit of fun with it. Yeah, we went on for too long because Mick needs his rest. Back surgery will do that to you.
100%. All right, we'll wrap it up there. For those of you listening at home, thanks for joining us. And we're halfway through the book now, so woo-hoo, happy days. And just like working through this book, the Republic wasn't built in a day, and neither are middle-aged men. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
See you, boys.